the worst financial decisions you'll regret later. In general, people said their worst decisions involved either spending too much or saving too little. They regretted wasting money on frivolous things, especially if they went into debt to do it. They also regretted putting too little of their money into savings and investments that could have helped them build up wealth. Of course, these bad choices are two sides of the same coin, since the more you spend, the less you save. 1. Not saving enough. The number one regret for people in the Claris poll was not saving enough of their monthly income. Nearly 1 out of 4 respondents said they hadn't saved enough, and 6% stated that they hadn't saved anything at all. Failing to save makes your life harder in several ways. First, if you don't save any of your income, you can't build an emergency fund. That means if an unexpected problem comes up, like a job loss, a medical crisis, or a major car repair, you don't have any money on hand to cover the bills. Without this cash cushion, you have to either borrow money or go begging to friends and family. A single disaster can send you into debt that could take years to repay. But even if you're lucky enough to avoid a financial crisis, having no savings makes it harder to reach your long-term goals. Without a nest egg, you'll never be able to make a down payment on a house, buy a new car, or even take a big vacation. If you have kids, you won't be able to help put them through college. You certainly won't be able to retire early, and you might not be able to retire at all. The takeaway: when you're young, it's tempting to live it up and blow through money like there's no tomorrow. Some people even argue that you'll regret it if you don't live life to the hilt because you're only young once. Saving, they argue, can wait until you're older and richer. 2. Racking up consumer debt. About 1 out of 7 people in the Claris poll said their worst decision was going into debt for unnecessary purchases. They weren't upset about borrowing money in general, just that they borrowed when they didn't really need to. It's an important distinction because there's good debt and bad debt. Borrowing to buy a home or go to college can pay off in the long run, but borrowing to buy stuff you don't even need, like vacations or jewelry, never does. Once you're in debt, it can be hard to get out. Figures from creditcards.com show that the average credit card balance, for people who regularly carry one, is $7,527. If they make only the minimum monthly payments on the debt at a typical interest rate of 15%, it will take over 11 years and more than $3,300 in interest to pay off. And that's assuming they don't add any new purchases to the card in the meantime. Being unable to pay off debt was also a major regret for the Claris respondents. For 6% of them, failing to pay off a credit card was the worst decision they'd ever made. Another 3% said they had never managed to pay off all their debts. The takeaway: if you don't have any consumer debt now, you're on the right track financially. Just keep doing what you're doing, and don't get trapped in debt over things that aren't worth it. 3. Overspending in their 20s. Even if you don't get into debt, overspending is still a problem. The more you spend, the less you can save to put toward your other goals. About 1 out of 7 people in the Claris survey said they regretted living large in their 20s, frittering away their earnings on trivial things like dining out, clubbing, or clothes. Some of the respondents gave specific examples of unwise spending choices. For instance, 2% of them said they regretted spending money on alcohol or drugs. Another 2% regretted spending their college money on something trivial. Of course, there's a difference between reining in your spending and not spending at all. There is certainly some truth to the argument that you should enjoy your youth while you can, and not sacrifice today for the sake of tomorrow. But it's also true that your 20s are the time in your life when you have the fewest obligations. As you get older, you acquire responsibilities like a house and children, which eat up a lot of your income. If you don't take the opportunity to save while you're young and unencumbered, it will be much harder later. The takeaway: to have the best of both worlds, look for ways to enjoy your youth without spending all your money. You don't have to sit at home alone every night, but you can look for cheap or free entertainment, such as hikes, free concerts, or hanging out and playing games. Instead of dining out all the time, you can have a potluck dinner with your friends. 4. Not investing enough. Lastly, many respondents in the Claris poll said their worst money decision was not investing enough. 1 out of 20 said their biggest regret was not investing more in general, and 3% specifically regretted that they had never invested in stocks. Saving money is important, but it's usually not enough to reach financial independence. To build up enough cash for retirement, or for other big goals like buying a house, you need to invest. Stocks, bonds, and other investments are riskier than keeping your savings. Expenses is a good way to keep a rein on your spending, which leaves you with more cash to save and invest. More than 40% of the people in the Claris survey said this was a saving strategy that worked for them. It's not that hard to make your first budget if you don't have one already. The first step is to figure out how much you earn and how much you need for your regular monthly expenses. Then, set aside some money each month to cover once-in-a-while costs, such as insurance or medical bills. Finally, add a line in your budget for mad money. This is extra cash that you can spend on just for fun stuff, such as music downloads or coffee house lattes. Allowing yourself a few little luxuries each month makes it easier to stick to your plan. 2. Stay out of debt. More than 1 in 4 Claris respondents said their best advice was to stay out of debt. They didn't mention one type of debt specifically, but as noted above, consumer debt is the most harmful kind. Fortunately, it's also the easiest kind to avoid. All you have to do is refuse to buy anything you can't afford. If there isn't enough money in your bank account to cover the price on the tag, just walk away. The Claris respondents aren't the only people who think this is sound advice. It also shows up in an article at Business Insider, in which 9 successful people discuss what they'd like to tell their younger selves about money. Elliot Weisbluth, the CEO of the financial firm Hightower, says he would urge young people not to go into debt unless it's for a long-term investment that will pay off in the future. That's a lesson he learned in college when he decided to pass up a shiny new car, complete with a shiny new auto loan, for a used Jeep. 3. Eat out less. Nearly 1 in 5 respondents said their best tip for the young is to eat out less. This is one of the easiest ways to cut back on unnecessary spending. A look at restaurant meals shows that most dishes cost 2 to 4 times as much compared to the same food cooked at home. And the markup on drinks, such as coffee or soda, can be even higher. Cooking for yourself doesn't have to be a struggle. It's easy to find recipes online, and even videos to show you how to make a dish. If you're a hopeless cook, you can always rely on frozen meals or mixes. They're pricier than cooking from scratch, but they're still cheaper than eating out. 4. Use automatic deposits. It's much easier to save when you don't have to think about it. That's why 13% of respondents say their best advice is to use automatic deposits at your bank.